you may only see the comments that are showing on that platform. Just a heads up in case you are wondering who I'm talking to randomly sometimes. It's the other comments from the other platforms. So it's been a bit of a tiring week this last week, given that it's been so incredibly rainy without too much sun here in Hong Kong. And also, the air pressure, for some reason, has been causing me to wake up through the night and be subsequently exhausted through the day. So I am more tired than usual. Thank you for forgiving that. And also, thank you for forgiving if I don't make any sense at all. So today, I wanted to talk about a topic that is quite important to know about and then let go of. And it is money forgiveness. So, money forgiveness, we're going to talk about what it is, why we need to do it, and what can happen if we don't do it, which is kind of, yeah, just saying we kind of need to do it, right? That's essentially what it is. So, just as a disclaimer, my name is Raven. I'm the founder of MoneyMind.global. If you want to go and check out our website, please go ahead and do that. Thank you so much for supporting. It's in building right now, and it will be a social enterprise built to help support and educate people on the basics of the concepts of financial literacy. And those concepts are in this 5-pillar format, which is a course that we'll have on the website. And it's the 5 pillars of money mindsets, savings, budgeting, investing, wills, and legacy. Again, money mindsets, savings, budgeting, investing, wills, and legacy. And letting people know that these are the 5 pillars that I implemented into our life and our money strategy when we were going through building a startup. And I felt really, really insecure about all the gaps in my own personal financial knowledge, despite the fact that I had been working from quite a young age successfully in media and just getting by, as it were, doing very well, but not really having a plan and feeling subconsciously and consciously a bit insecure about not having a plan. Having some basic structure that I could say, this is all I really need to know for the foundations, and then I can build on it from there. That made so much peace occur in my life and my subconscious, because I felt otherwise like everyone else knew all this information that I perhaps didn't know, and also that I might be missing things. Maybe there's other really important areas that I don't know about, and I can't seem to get answers from people on. And, I felt like I felt very insecure not knowing, because I love knowing stuff and I love learning and I love information. And so I said, okay, let's look into the gaps that I have in my own financial knowledge and figure out what the basic foundations are to be able to plug all the gaps and say, this is all it is. It turned out to be so simple that it was just these 5 pillars of money mindsets, savings, budgeting, investing, wills, and legacy that I said, wow, this has made such a difference to me. I think it might be able to help other people too. And I discussed with my husband, and we decided that it made sense for me to go into committing all of my time to launching this social enterprise to be able to empower other people in these beginners' first steps of managing their own money and personal finance. Essentially, the stuff we wish that we had been taught in school and don't know why we weren't, but without too much detail or depth. Really just an overview saying, here are the 5 pillars, here's how they work, here's why they're important, here's some tips and strategies that I use that are opinions only, not advice, because I'm not a financial industry advisor or professional, and I have dyscalculia, which is numbers dyslexia, so I can't advise and I don't advise, and this is not advice. This is sharing of opinions and communicating about my own journey and what I use with these 5 pillars and how they have worked in my life and how they could potentially be a fit for other people's lives too, if that so happens to be the case for you. So all that information is over on moneymind.global. It's still in building pre-launch. So if you want to find out when the course launches, sign up on our website and get the newsletters when we have time to create them. I say we, I mean me. Okay, so working on it. And thank you everybody for all of your support for this entire year. It's been really, really great to be live broadcasting and having the support of so many people who have joined and done live testing for us and given opinions and feedbacks on what could be better, what needs to improve, what would make it more cohesive. And so everything has been implemented back into the course every time we do live testing, which is also why it's taking a little bit longer to final launch, because we're doing all these live testing versions. So thank you everyone who's contributed for those. And we have some more pillars to test before we can launch. So we're excited to be doing that and working on that now. I mean I. And I do have other members of my team that are outsourced members of the team because it's very, very small. Like a web maintenance guy, and I have someone who's creating these amazing PDF forms that will be part of the big bundle package that is the single main 5-pillar course. And then eventually, hopefully, we'll have some charity for schools education. And then also my big dream is to have financial literacy books. So my big dream is to get a literary agent in international waters so that they can believe in the concept enough to say, I want to make this a very sizable series if possible, and be able to spread the message of financial literacy for picture books 5 to 7 years old. Because our financial literacy mindsets, the first pillar, they're embedded at the age of 3 to 7. And I realized that the way to really affect change was to empower women and empower families, and then empower the children as well through that family cycle. So that's part of our goal at moneymind.global. And thank you everyone for supporting. I really appreciate it. Gosh, I'm really tired. Okay, so we're jumping straight into the money forgiveness and why it's important to moving forward. So I'm not sure if anybody has had the experience where they have made money decisions that they regret. Either wasting a lot of money on something, investing later in life, spending a lot on something that really you just kind of regret buying, or saying, wow, okay, I could have done slightly differently with my money. It's very easy in those instances to carry that and think, I'm bad with money, or think that was stupid, or think other things that are just not helpful to think, because it's done, it's done. We don't have to do it again in future. So why keep carrying it? We're carrying the memory of that, that incident or that decision, and with judgment. So money forgiveness is always about when we have some decision we have made with money, or our life or our time or something that's somehow tied with money, and we have not forgiven ourselves for that decision. If there's an emotion around it, if we're like, oh, I made a bad decision, sure, whatever, I forgot about it already, then this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about those things in our lives that we've regretted. If there's any feeling of regret around something, then that is a weight, right? That doesn't feel light and fluffy and happy. It feels like regret. It feels like, and regret often ties in with all these wormy little thoughts that can be there. Oh, you did this, or that was bad, or nah, 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 nah. And it can really start to have a lot of sort of worms in it. These are you know, like those are different. These are air, whatever, and those are worms. Okay, in case you can't tell the difference between the air. What are those? Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Anyhow, okay, so regret can have a lot of little wormy things in it, and we don't want that living in our brain, essentially. We don't want it living in our emotion, and we don't want to get into the habit of having multiple little regret blobs living around in our life. So there are 2 types of compassion that we want to be working on if we notice that we have any areas in our life that we want to be implementing money forgiveness. And this is very hard to do, because we will want psychologically to cling on to things that make us feel safe. And our brain will cling on to things that we feel were mistakes so that we can avoid doing them again in future. Now that's all good and well, except we don't live in a super dangerous situation in our normal everyday lives anymore. Most of us, apart from, you know, the obvious like plague and everything that's going on right now, but a lot of us, we have these reactions in our brains where we are reacting to things as if they're much more dramatic to our safety and our like life existence. And anxiety and stress and these types of things are that type of primitive reaction to trying to keep us safe and keep us alive. Whereas the reality is that for most of us who are very blessed in our world and our lives and watching this, hopefully are safe, we don't have to worry about our primal safety as much as we did when our brains were forming these pathways. So the two types of compassion that we need to be aware of implementing are to self and others with money forgiveness and why it's key to moving forward. So to ourself, saying, did I make this decision and was it the wrong decision? Yes. Am I happy with having made that decision? Yes or no? Like, I have a friend who bought a new car straight from the lot and she loved it. And she said, you know, as soon as I drove that car off the lot, I knew I had made a bad financial decision. And I had made a decision that I would not have supported if I had really thought about it and said, am I going to plan to do this? There's no way I would have planned to do that. That doesn't make financial sense. But I love this car and I love that I have it, and I'm not going to beat myself up about the fact that I made a bad decision. And so she was conscious of the fact that she had made a bad decision, but practiced immediately self-compassion to say, that is okay. I have made a bad decision. For whatever reasons I made that decision, I forgive myself and I will move on and go into appreciation mode where I can appreciate the effects of that decision and what it has brought me. In this case, a car. In some cases, we'll make a bad decision and it will bring us both, say, a car and learning. I have learned, and this is so valuable because learning is one of the most valuable things we can ever gain, okay? Even if it's tough learning, hard learning, very like difficult learning, it is still valuable or worth considering as valuable, because otherwise we can get very frustrated thinking, what was the point of that? And I find that a very useful way to progress through life, because otherwise I can get mired in feeling bad about stuff or feeling regretful or feeling unhelpful emotions that are very natural and right to feel as a reaction to something, but don't help me to move forward. And so I've started to choose what does help me to move forward. Even if it's very difficult for me to let go of those things, I still work very, very hard to process things, just in my everyday life, to move forward, to be better, to try and look at things differently and look at things as learning. So this experience where, you know, you do something, you regret it, and then you say, okay, I will let go. I have gained this car. And the learning that next time I will have a plan. I will not do this again. I will plan to either go in and spend this money and say, I want to buy this car new and this is part of my plan and I'm okay with that. Or I will plan to go to a secondhand car lot and look for a comparable version of the car and then get that. So that's why it can work to have a plan moving forward, but that's why we need to be aware of our own money mindsets and of our own forgiveness pattern. Because if she had just kept beating herself up about it, 1, she doesn't appreciate the car. 2, she ends up feeling bad. 3, it ends up distracting her from making other good decisions about other things just in her life, because she feels like, oh, I've made a bad decision. Maybe I'll make other bad decisions about other stuff. But the regret and the distraction can actually cause us to make bad decisions, ironically, just by clogging up our mental space and our judgment. And we can sometimes so eagerly try, when we have not forgiven ourselves for something to do with money or a decision, we can so much try to avoid it again that we can swing way over onto the opposite side, even if that isn't what serves us best, because we haven't forgiven. And so our reaction is so much more dramatically extreme than it would be. We might say, oh, that's just a bad decision. Okay, next time I'll kind of go in this area, in the middle area, with something more tempered or more helpful to me, instead of like, I will never buy a car again, right? Or like, oh my God, I'm never going to buy anything new again. Like, those are examples of extreme reactions that can occur if we have a lot of lacking self-forgiveness in there, which is really just self-compassion. Um, so with self-compassion and self-forgiveness, this also works with others. Because if we're really like carrying this baggage, it can sometimes be a habit that we're also carrying it about other people. And that then takes up even more space, because then it makes it seem like other people are also dangerous. Other people are a risk. And that clogs up even more emotional space about how do I react around people? Like, do I have to be careful around them? Are they going to take advantage of me? Like, these types of things. And in both cases, the solution is twofold. One, we ask ourselves, does this thought or this reaction serve me any longer? Holding on to the emotions. Because I can hold on to the thought and say, okay, Bob is bad. He is not a good influence in my life and will try and take advantage of me and my money, whatever. So Bob is bad. Do I need to have emotions around that? Or can I just remember Bob is bad? A lot of us tie a thought with emotions so that it associates it with danger, danger. But the emotion takes up a lot of space. So can we just remember Bob is bad and say, okay, I'm equipped now to let go of that emotional baggage and say, I can forgive Bob and say, I can forgive you for being bad in my judgment, of course. We don't have to be friends. We don't have to like reconcile this. I judge you as bad. What am I going to do moving forward? I can forgive you and decide what to do moving forward without carrying the emotional baggage. Maybe we decide we never want to see Bob again. He's really just not worth having in our life. And if we do have to see him, then we don't spend time talking to him, or we don't spend time investing in that relationship at all. We spend as little time as possible with Bob. If he comes to say hi to us, we say, hi, Bob, please excuse me, and go away. Just walk away. Go talk to somebody else. Bob will go find people who he is closer friends with, or he is going to leech onto and take advantage of separately to you. So it's really important to ask, how am I clinging on to things? How can I let go of them? The emotional baggage. I have what I call a doubt bucket. If there's any emotion that is helpful, unhelpful, or not useful, I say, okay, I'm going to take that thought out of my head, because the thought is always a trigger to emotion, right? So if we think a thought, it will trigger an emotion. Sometimes we will have an emotion just come up, but it's usually a reaction to a thought, something that we have experienced and processed into an emotion. So unhelpful or unuseful thought or emotion, boink, I tip it into the doubt bucket that sits by my feet, and I have a little fire in it so it can burn up and become like lovely bits of light, kind of like fireflies flying around kind of thing. So that's helpful for me because it reminds me, it's just a mechanism to say, okay, this is something that reminds me that I do have control over the thoughts that I think. I do have control whether to dwell on something. And ruminating or dwelling on something over and over again is something that I used to have a really big problem with. And it would really affect my confidence. It would really affect like my internal more self-esteem, because I'm fairly confident, but my self-esteem was like a very different ball game. So it was very self-doubting. And I'd still go ahead and do stuff anyways, because I had the confidence to just go ahead and say, well, whatever, I'm going to try and I'm going to do stuff. But my self-confidence was like, it was very hard on myself. It was very difficult. So I've had to do a very big like self-forgiveness journey, like all the way along through my money and all these other areas of life as well. And I found that it is definitely the single biggest thing to liberating self, because when we're carrying around all this stuff, it doesn't hurt anyone else. It doesn't make any difference to anybody else whatsoever. It just affects us, singularly and solely us alone. And we can decide. And if we let a thought that is not forgiveness based dwell in our minds, it will stay there and it will just play and it will take up all this space. And I don't know if you notice, but it tends to get worse and worse over time. It will get really like offended and be like really upset about whatever. And it will be like, oh yeah, and Bob, and then he did this and he does other stuff. And Bob's just like this. And he's just, oh gosh, next time I see him, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Like, it will just be like, okay, so, you know, maybe Bob doesn't appreciate our gifts or our giving or our time that we spend on whatever it is that he constantly asks us for. I don't know who this Bob is, okay? Like, he's a non-existent person in my life because I don't have to deal with this stuff anymore because I have so much improved my boundaries over the years. But this theoretical Bob, this random Bob, sorry, anyone who's called Bob, yeah? It's just yes, unfortunate. But yeah, we can say, okay, can I practice self-compassion by saying, does this serve me? If this thought doesn't serve me, no, I'm going to practice self-compassion. Just no. I'm going to stop it from like gabbing in my ear. I'm going to say, I'm sorry. No. The same way I'm going to do to Bob in person, I'm going to say, I'm sorry. No. Just no. Blocked thought. And that is a type of compassion to ourselves. Stopping ourselves from saying things inside our head that are not useful, not helpful. Because those thoughts will be the thoughts that say, oh, you made this decision, that was so stupid. Why would you do that? That now we've got all these problems, blah, 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 blah. Not helpful, not useful. Does it solve the problem? Does it help the situation? Absolutely not. It is helpful to say, okay, we have made this decision. It is not a good decision. We will do it differently in future, and here's how. So that is what we want to be working towards. We want to be saying with ourselves or with others, how have we not been forgiving? How have we held on to emotions that are really just weighing us down? And now, how do we want to move forward with that? So it will be, firstly, letting go in ourselves, saying, I see you as being how you are, and I understand you have your own reasons for being however you are. I have forgiven you for being rubbish, and we will have different boundaries, different distances in future, or whatever it is. Like, I will not make this mistake again, or whatever the action step is. But we can see our own decisions, stop judging them. Other people's decisions, stop judging them. Just know that they've happened. And after we have let go of that emotional judgment, that emotional process of feeling angry, feeling judgmental, feeling sad, or feeling stuck, a lot of this will make us feel kind of stuck and frustrated. So if you have stuck or frustrated feelings around stuff, this is why. It's because forgiveness is what's needed to crack that open and let it go. It's hard. It's really hard. But when we say, okay, we're going to try practicing forgiveness, sometimes what we need to do to open that nut is to say to ourselves and really do a process of working on, what are we going to do? So we say, we have like a little meeting with ourselves and we say, what are we actually going to do? So here I have these forgiveness things, as if there's two of us, like sitting at a table brainstorming. So, okay, I have these things that I need to forgive in these people. And the other person says, okay, what's the plan? How can you guarantee, or at least show me that you're going to make a really strong effort not to have this happen again? And we say, here is the plan. Here is how. And if that is solid and we trust that and that will work and that we will try and do it, then sometimes that can work to say, okay, I trust that this will work, and that can start to dissolve with a plan. So when we see Bob, if he asks for money, we're not going to lend him money. We say, I'm sorry, Bob, we don't lend money anymore. Or, I'm sorry, Bob, we're not going to lend you money anymore. Or, I'm sorry, Bob, money lending is something that we have stopped doing now. Depending on your situation, obviously, right? If you're lending money to other people, complicated, but, and then just not Bob, then, you know, it's dependent on our situations. It is worth us being able to have both the idea of the boundaries and practiced phrases that we will be able to use when those situations come up. When Bob asks, when Bob comes over and says, "Oh, can I borrow your, your chainsaw or whatever?" And he always returns things in terrible condition. You say, "I'm sorry, Bob. No, you returned the last thing in terrible condition, and I value my chainsaw. I want to keep it in good condition." And he says, "Oh, no. I'll do it different this time." You said, "Yeah, but you say that, the last 3 times. So no, Bob, I'm not going to lend you my chainsaw. Maybe you can ask somebody else." And no is okay. No is not bad, doesn't need judgment. No is simply self-respecting ourselves and saying, with my life, in this experience of me being this person, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I'm not comfortable with. There's no judgment around that. If we're comfortable with something or not comfortable with something, that's entirely fine. That is our choice and our right. And to say to somebody, "I thought I was fine with something, and you have proved that I should not be fine with it," that's fine. People that we say no to when they're used to getting a yes will get angry, because people are brats and they want what they want, and they're often selfish, and we have trained them that they will get what they want from us. And so when we start to implement these boundaries, there is a very big chance that there will be a big reaction, that Bob will start to get really grumpy or really start to badmouth us in our neighborhood or something like that. That's just Bob being angry, and really that reflects on Bob and his character, and further proves why it's a good idea not to be so close to Bob, because clearly he doesn't have great character. If he's going around bad-mouthing someone because they don't do what he wants, that's terrible. Bob, no. Bob, you got terrible character, Bob. So, not any other Bob in the world, just this one imaginary Bob. So when we know that that person's judgment is also not necessary for us to beat ourselves up about, and standing our ground is right for us, if we make that decision, then we can feel that we have decided that without judgment on ourselves. We can forgive Bob for his past messing up of our equipment or whatever, the money he doesn't lend back, or whatever it is, but we don't have to further indulge him. And we don't have to feel bad about saying no or about having done that in the past. Because it's really important to remember that we will make decisions based on what we feel we can best cope with or do or deal with in our life. So an example of that is if we get ourselves into crazy credit card debt. Many people will say, I can't, it's, I'm just going to avoid it. I feel like this is a terrible representation of me as a person inside themselves. This isn't something that most people will talk about because they'll feel so embarrassed about having gone into this situation at all. And I have gone into getting credit card debt, and I have felt that feeling, and I have been very uncomfortable with it. And it was really just from avoidance. And I know that the situations that I was in were entirely my own creation, right? I was just not budgeting, not tracking, just spending. Fortunately for me, I had the money, but I just wasn't dealing with it. And I was kind of freaking out and avoiding stuff. So it's very stressful and it's very uncomfortable, I think, to have situations that we think, why was I doing that? Why did I get myself into situations that stressed me out? Or why was I avoiding things because I just didn't understand, how to read statements or how to do things when, I was a teenager, right? So why have I been so hard on myself for things I didn't know? And that's really important for us to forgive in ourselves. Because if we had known, come on, today we know if we had known, we would have done stuff differently. And we know now, and so we would do things differently now. But judging old us for not knowing or for having to do things differently because of whatever emotional state they were in, that is not kind. And that is a type of self-forgiveness and compassion that we really need to have. Because if old us was in an emotional state to do things differently, they would have done things differently. But they did what they were able to emotionally process and go through at the time. And if that was just an experience that was happening in life that we would later learn from, like I later learned how to address this whole area and say, budgeting. I'm going to be able to look at budgeting and have a budgeting expense app and do all this stuff. The fact that I went through experiences like that when I was very young meant that later on, I said, hey, can I help people in this area? Because I remember the stress that I felt when I was going through it. And that has caused something much bigger and better to come out of that experience. So I have learned something really valuable from that stressful emotion, from that area. And I've had to forgive myself, because if I had kept saying, oh, wow, this is just me, this is terrible, and associating that with my identity or my character, it would have been easy for me to just, stay feeling bad about stuff that I was no longer doing, that I had done decades ago. Same as being in terrible relationships with people. Same as making bad decisions about like whatever, we're like wasting money when we could have been saving it instead. Any of these decisions we can let go of. And if we want to, we can forgive this decision. We can forgive our younger self. And we can say, we know that we had made the best decision that we knew how to make at the time, or that we wanted to make. Maybe at university, we wanted to go out with our friends and do these things and form those valuable memories. Yes, that's a decision. Now we may wish we had saved more, but then we wanted to go and have those life experiences, and that's what money bought. If we have a very hard time forgiving ourselves, we can try doing the exercise of writing a letter to our younger self. And that is ourself writing from today and writing to our younger self saying, I forgive you. Actually physically writing it down on a piece of paper and just writing out all the things that you wanted to say. You will grow and become a stronger person than you could ever imagine. You will go through challenges and you will come through them. You will be able to learn from the things that you have experienced, that you struggle with right now, and you will triumph. And you will be here at the end of it, still standing, still doing whatever you're going to be doing, and that is okay. Writing a letter to our younger self can be very helpful if we are quite stuck in our money forgiveness. We can say, I forgive those terrible credit card decisions. I forgive that terrible ex-boyfriend. I forgive buying that car off the lot. I forgive Bob. And we can go ahead and do that. So that's a good way to let go of the money forgiveness if we feel quite stuck and like we're really clinging to it. That's a very good practice exercise, the letters to our younger self. But if we're looking in our future as well, we can apply this letter to our younger self to forgive ourselves. And in future, we can decide on the parameters of boundaries and phrases that we will use to be able to move us forward with our money forgiveness, so that we can make decisions that we feel happy with, proud of, and aligned with the self that we want to be. And it really boils down to that. Everything that we want to do in our life, we will feel aligned with if it's the self that we want to be, our authentic self. And if it is distant to the person that we wish we were, there will be a cognitive dissonance, which is a disruption between what we believe and what we want. And that will cause stress, that will cause anxiety, and cause us to try and cling to things for safety, like not forgiving, like feeling stuck, like not moving forward. So what we want to be working on is, what would my ideal self say to Bob? Like the me that I would really admire. So I have to do this a lot because I know that the ideal me would be quite patient and be very diplomatic. And I am fairly so, but I can sometimes have very strong reactions to things that I'm like, oh, that is so lame. And instead I say, that is an interesting way to consider things. right? And I prefer that because it is less judgmental of not only myself, but other people. Because to be fair, my view is the only view that I ever experience. But that does not negate the fact that your view is valid and everyone else's view is valid too. And recognizing that, I try and be a better person by forgiving myself for having strong judgments on things that are unnecessary. And instead asking, hey, can I look at this from a different angle? You know, maybe Bob doesn't realize he's doing this. Maybe that car salesman was actually just really good. And that's why I bought that car straight off the lot. Like, kudos, admire. Maybe I'll learn some sales skills like that guy, or go back and just be like, dude, teach me what you know. Like, what can I gain out of this situation that I could say, I've forgiven myself, and now I see the next steps forward? How can I use it to my advantage? How can I let go of that old energy of the younger self or the past decisions, even if they were yesterday? We can let go because yesterday doesn't exist anymore. Today is here, today is all we have, and today is where forgiveness is really able to clear space for us to move forwards and be the people we want to be and live the lives we want to live. And it first comes from us because we create our lives, right? Even if it's just appreciating all of the life that we do have currently. It doesn't have to be different. We can super love our lunch today more than yesterday, even if it's the same lunch, even if it's the same situation. Appreciation and practicing gratitude for our choices comes from aligning with what we feel are decisions that are right for us and right for our personality, our choices, our best self that we would admire or want to be. And it's different for each person. So I cannot tell you what yours might be. I wouldn't know, but you know. And so you would be feeling comfortable when things are aligned with those areas that you admire in yourself. And sometimes when you look at other people and you feel a bit intimidated or you feel a bit like, oh, it's because that thing that you admire is reflected in you. And that resonation will make you feel like, wow, the admiration will cause that part of you to wake up and say, look, it's like me. It's like me. But we often don't see it that way. We see someone else that we admire and we maybe get intimidated, or we think, oh, no, I'm not like that. But the reason why we admire them is because we are like that in some way, in some part. Maybe we admire how much Beyonce works. Maybe we admire her creative talent, her voice, her skill. Some part of us has these abilities to thrive in those areas. Maybe not at those levels, but even in some way, there's some pairing or some match saying, I love music too. I love that creative visual, like, extravagance too. I love how hard you work and how focused you are and how you overcome obstacles. I love that too, because I wish I was like that, because deep down, I am like that. But it's working to come up. And forgiveness is what can help those things to start living in our lives in our every single day. So that's why money forgiveness is important, very, very like holistically. And hopefully there have been some tips or some insights or some ideas or examples that have been helpful for you today. If you're watching, thank you so much. I'm Raven, and I talk about money stuff here on live broadcasts and on moneymind.global. I will hopefully be writing blogs in the future, when things are more settled with the business and built. This 5-pillar course is being built right now, and those 5 pillars are money mindsets, savings, budgeting, investing, wills, and legacy, as an overview of the concepts. And part of my mission is to spread awareness of financial literacy, empowerment, so that people can live their best lives and enjoy what they have and use it to their maximum advantage. So thank you for joining, and I will see you next time.